Okay, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to crack open a spiritual classic from way back in 1896, Ellen G. White's Thoughts from the Mount of Blessing. Now, this book is a really powerful commentary on what's probably the most famous speech ever given, the Sermon on the Mount. And what we're going to see is that White presents it as way more than just a historical event. She sees it as a timeless blueprint for a completely transformed life.
Right out of the gate, White frames this sermon with just incredible significance. I mean, this isn't just a collection of nice sayings or good advice. She calls it heaven's benediction to the world, a direct message coming straight from the throne of God. So that really sets the stage for everything else. These words are meant to be a source of light and hope and divine law for all of us.
But, to really get why this message was so revolutionary, we've got to understand the world it landed in. White paints this picture of a religious landscape where the actual spirit of devotion had kind of been lost. It was buried under all these layers of tradition and ceremony.
And here's where we see this huge disconnect in expectations. The people at the time, they weren't looking for some kind of spiritual renewal. Nope. They were looking for a political hero. They wanted a Messiah who would show up as this great prince, conquer the Romans, and make Israel a big deal in the world again. They were waiting for a king, not a savior.
And this was the dominant religious mindset of the day. White calls it the righteousness of the Pharisees. It was a whole system built on how you looked on the outside, on trying to earn God's favor by keeping every little rule perfectly and making big public shows of how pious you were. It was a religion designed to make you look good, but more often than not, it left your heart completely untouched.
And this is where White argues the whole system just fell apart. This kind of righteousness was so deeply flawed because, it was missing any real saving faith. It was all built on human traditions, not on divine principles. And the motivation, it was often about self-glory, not a genuine love for God. And in the end, White says this hard, rigid system actually became a stumbling block, pushing sincere people away from God instead of drawing them in.
So how do you challenge a system like that? This is where we get to the great disruption. Against this whole backdrop of rule-keeping and political ambition, Jesus shows up and presents a completely new framework for life, a brand new blueprint straight from heaven.
I mean, can you just imagine being in that crowd? White really emphasizes how strange and new these teachings must have sounded. They were completely countercultural. They turned every popular idea about religion and power and what it means to be happy completely on its head.
And all of a sudden, the values of this new kingdom are revealed, and they just flip the world's logic upside down. First up, it's not the proud and the self-sufficient who are blessed, but the poor in spirit.
And it's not the ones celebrating their own strength who find favor, but they that mourn over their spiritual condition. They're the ones who are promised comfort.
Then you hear that it's not the aggressive types who fight for power that get the reward, but the meek who will actually inherit the earth.
And finally, it's not about being pure because of some external ceremony. The real blessing is for the pure in heart, because they're the ones who are going to see God.
So it becomes crystal clear that Jesus wasn't talking about an earthly empire at all. He was opening up a totally different reality, a spiritual kingdom, a kingdom defined not by land or military power, but by the internal qualities of love and grace and a kind of righteousness that only comes from God.
And the solution to that old, broken system was this radical shift in focus, away from all the outward rules and onto the inner transformation of the heart itself.
This is such a key insight from White's commentary. See, Jesus wasn't throwing out the law. He was revealing its true purpose. The law given on Mount Sinai was never supposed to be just some cold, rigid code. It was always meant to be an expression of the principle of love, a reflection of the very law of heaven.
And you can see the difference in his approach so clearly right here. The old standard focused just on the outward action, thou shalt not kill. But Jesus dives so much deeper, right to the root of the issue. He says that even anger in your heart is a violation of that principle. He completely shifted the entire measure of righteousness from what you do on the outside to what's going on in your heart.
White uses this really powerful metaphor to explain just how deep Christ's teaching goes. True righteousness isn't just about stopping yourself from doing the evil deed. It's about uprooting the hateful thought where that deed even begins. Like pulling a weed out by its seed. It's all about dealing with sin at its absolute source.
So, how does this all come together? Well, at the end of the sermon,
Jesus gives this powerful analogy that just perfectly summarizes the choice he's laid out for everyone. It really is the ultimate takeaway.
And he frames this choice with a very direct, very personal question. It's one that echoes through White's commentary and lands right at our feet today. Which builder are you?
The choice is pretty stark. It's between two foundations, and they lead to two very different fates. You have the wise builder, who hears these life-changing words and actually puts them into practice, building their life on the solid rock of Christ's teaching. And then you have the foolish builder, who hears the exact same words, but doesn't do them, building instead on the shifting sand of human opinions and traditions.
And the message here is crystal clear. In a world that's constantly changing, where everything feels uncertain, these principles, this word, are presented as the only steadfast, sure foundation you can build an unshakable character on.
This quote right here really nails the central thesis of the entire book. True religion, true righteousness, isn't about doing a bunch of stuff to try and earn God's favor. It's about doing those things as a response to the gift of His love, a gift we've already received. Obedience just naturally flows from a heart that's been changed by grace.
And so we end right where Jesus ended, with a question that forces us all to look inward. After hearing these words, after exploring this divine blueprint, the choice is still there. What is the foundation of your character? Is it built on the solid rock, or is it built on shifting sand?